Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be sharing my process of making a customized anime figure of Fujimito from Ponyo. I want to try to make a one-of-a-kind styled anime figure, and when I looked up tutorials, most of what I can find are one-of-a-kind dolls. Now, I love Monster High. I've made a couple of custom Monster High dolls myself, but I wanted an anime figure. I found that most of the videos are how to sculpt an animated character by scratch, and I am not a sculptor. Although I do see videos like Tama Kids on her Reagan figure, but those types of videos come few and far between. So in case you're like me and you're looking for a video on how to make an anime figure more in like a one-of-a-kind style, then welcome. Now, this is my first time making a customized anime figure and making a video like this, so there will be some details left out. I'm not quite used to crafting on camera, so this will be less of a tutorial and more of a process. I hope you can enjoy. Back in August 2009, I was around 10 years old when my older sister took me to see Ponyo in theaters. This was my first ever Studio Ghibli movie that I saw in the movie theater, and at the time, I was obsessed with things like mermaids, ocean life, and I was just getting into anime. Ponyo is Hayao Miyazaki's take on The Tale of the Little Mermaid. It's a charming kids movie about a young fish princess named Ponyo who runs away from home and is saved by a little boy named Sosuke. They soon become best friends as they explore the human realm together, first as a fish and then as a human. Our main antagonist is Fujimito, who is voiced by Liam Neeson. He is a mysterious yet neurotic sea wizard and overprotective father who is tasked to watch over his daughters while keeping the balance of the ocean intact. He spends the whole movie trying to protect his daughters from the dangers of the human realm and to protect the ocean from getting out of balance. He's the first character we meet on the opening scene of this film. We're met with stunning visuals of mystical ocean life surrounding his submarine as he attends his duties. This first scene might be my favorite scene in the whole film, and it's what I'd like to capture in my figure. I first visit my local anime shop to pick out a base. This prize figure not only resembles the character in fashion, but also has a good pose and basic details I can take away or build upon. Thankfully, this figure actually comes in pieces, so it makes it easier to take it apart and work on each section. I sketched the figure's pose in my sketchbook. This acts as a blueprint of what I want to translate onto the figure. I take off all detachable pieces from the figure, and I want to start with a blank slate, so I use acetone to strip the base of its color. Now with a clean slate, I mix 2 parts epoxy sculpt, and I start making the collar onto his jacket. I don't have experience with sculpting, so I put down a flat piece of sculpt, and I sketch out the shape of the collar with a pin, and I cut it out with a box cutter. The tailcoat seemed a little bit long, so I removed a good chunk of the bottom, and I smoothed out the edges with epoxy sculpt. I then use a box cutter to carve out his rolled up sleeves in exchange for long sleeves. This also helps hide the edge of his gloves, so I can just use them as hands. I then use a mechanical pencil to draw directly onto the figure of where I want his stripes to be. I was having a really hard time sculpting his hair. He originally had a ponytail, which I easily cut off, and the details of the strands was really hard for me, so I didn't record this. I ended up building upon it later with another type of epoxy sculpt. Same thing, different brand, so it appears black. Luckily, the original character's bangs are very similar to Fujimoto's, so I just kept those. And I actually used the color as sort of a reference guide to what tone I want to color the rest of the hair. I noticed that the paint wasn't quite sticking onto the epoxy sculpt, so I covered the whole thing in Mod Podge, and I began painting over that. If you notice, I also adjusted his facial details. I gave him a bigger nose and a bigger chin to more closely match the character. Yeah, sure, the original character from Fate did have a nice nose, but Fujimoto just has a big, lovely nose that I had to capture. I use a thin mechanical pencil to start sketching out his facial details. This is really hard to do and record, so Here's what I have so far. Thankfully, the figure's legs are detachable, which made the painting process so much easier. The original prize figure came with a very boring base. I found that more upscale figures tend to have decorated bases. In my initial draft, I imagined this figure to have a whole background because that's what I thought it deserved. I even went out and I bought a glass fishbowl to act as the bubble that you see on the submarine in the opening scene, very similar to this garage kit, but I figured that it took up way too much space and I do not have the shelf space for that. I wanted to recreate the overall vibe of his submarine ship, so I found these wooden coffee stirrers at work and I kind of laid them down with Mod Podge to be like ship floorboards. Throughout the movie, you see him mess with these potions or elixirs that are in these really tall vases, and I was having a hard time trying to figure out how to make. I found these little resin wine bottles at my local Michael's, and I put a little bit of airline tubing from my fish tank. I then use a hot glue gun to make kind of the ridge around it to hide that seam. I also sculpted handles for the vases with epoxy sculpt. Once I painted them, they looked real nice. I also used this one D&D dice a friend gave me that's in the shape of a potion bottle, and I figured, why not? I was really satisfied to see how this turned out after it was painted. I painted the knot that's seen in front of the ship. The base is blue. I even sculpted a little starfish to more reference those barnacles you can sometimes see. I thought the pose was fitting for him holding one of the vases. Now, I still wanted a background element of sorts, so I wanted to include some moon jellyfish, and I wasn't quite sure how to do this. I thought I would have to do this in resin, which I'm very inexperienced of, but I ended up making them with dabs of hot glue. Once the hot glue dried, I used a blue acrylic wash on them to give them their translucent blue color. I was really surprised to see how well this actually turned out. I also used the hot glue and epoxy to make a little pipette for him to hold in his other hand, since that's what he was using in the scene. Once everything is glued down and dried, I added a little touch, Ponyo. I lined the details of his face with a really thin micron and also using washed out acrylic paints for makeup. Overall, I'm really proud of the end result. It turned out way better than I thought. I'm happy that I didn't let my inexperience with sculpting stop me from this project. And I think he looks nicely next to my fish tank. Not only have I seen more appreciation for this movie, but I've also seen more merch on the shelves. At this rate, maybe I should start a collection soon. How about you? Does your favorite Studio Ghibli character have their own figure? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in another video.